Okay, so this next video is kind of go over the rules of Gwent. If you already know the rules of Gwent, you can skip it. Go to number 3 where I go into the actual coding part. But otherwise, here's how it works. So, yeah. Okay, so the general way it works, each game has 3 rounds. Every round, players take turns playing 1 card each until one player decides to pass. Then when one player decides to pass, the other player can play as many cards as he wants until he decides to pass. Then at that point, you calculate each player's total. Whichever player has a higher total wins that round. Whichever player wins 2 rounds first wins the game. All right? So the general strategy is you either want to ideally win the round, playing as few cards as possible. Or if you can't do that, make sure your opponent has to use some cards to win the round. If that makes sense, right? Also, cards have a bunch of different special abilities, which I'll go over right now. So if you look here, this little heart symbol, that means medic. Medics mean you can revive a non-hero card from your graveyard. By the way, hero cards have this little special border. So those are all the hero cards. All these ones without the border are not hero cards. Hero cards are immune to weather effects and special abilities. Anyway, so medic lets you revive a non-hero card from your graveyard. Also, medics, if you revive a creature with the medic ability, that ability immediately activates and you can revive another creature if there's another creature in your graveyard for you to revive. So that is what medic does. It's pretty good. This little eyeball symbol here, that is the spy ability. The way that works, you play them on the opposite side of the board. So like if I'm this player and I play a spy, it's going to go on this side of the field, right? This spy got played by that player. But yeah, they go on the opposite side of the field. Their strength contributes to your opponent's score, but you get to draw 2 extra cards. Medics are actually, or spies are actually super powerful, and honestly, probably the best strategy in this game. It's not. It's a mini game in a single player game. So like tactically, you know, the medic spies are the best strategy, but that's not important. There's also morale. Morale is this little plus sign. Morale increases the strength of every creature in the row by 1 besides itself, not counting hero cards. There's also tight bond. So tight bond is exponential. The way it works, if you have 2 of the same unit with this tight bond ability in like 1 round, it will double both of their strengths, but it's exponential. So if you can get a 3rd one, they're all times 4. So tight bond can be really powerful if you get, you know, the right cards in your hand. There's also muster. Muster is this thing. The way muster works, when you play a card with the muster ability from your hand, you immediately also play every other card in that muster group that's in your hand and deck. There's a couple different muster groups. This is, I think, the shadow group. There's neckers and vampires and the crones and a couple different groups of monsters. But yeah, the way it works is it pulls a group of monsters and you play them all at once. So muster can be really powerful, but it also can bite you in the butt because if you have a lot of cards from the same muster group in your hand, like it's just a way to burn cards from your hand really fast. You know, if you have like 1 of those cards in your hand, 3 in your deck, super great. That's a very strong play. If you have 3 of those cards in your hand, that is a really terrible play, and you might lose that game. So that's what muster does. There's also scorch. There's none of those on the board right now, or well, this has been. The way scorch works, there's 2 different scorches. There's one that is row specific. So this is the row specific scorch. And it will check 1 row on the enemy's board. And if the total of that row is over 10, it finds like the max strength of a unit in that row and it kills every unit with that strength. So I'm not sure which one this is, but let's pretend this is Scorch ranged. It checks, he has 24 points for this row. That is more than 10. So then it checks what's the max strength of a creature in this row. It's 10 for these two cringe-free dragon riders. And so they would both get killed by that Scorch. So that's what Scorch does. The other Scorch applies to the whole board, your side and their side, every single range row. And it does the same thing except for the entire board. So it finds the max strength for non-hero units, and it kills every creature on the board that has that strength. So yeah, Scorch is pretty good. There's also Decoy. So you can see one in the graveyard right now. By the way, this is your hand, this is your graveyard. The way Decoy works is you can swap it for one non-hero card on your side of the board. So like you could, if you had this in your hand, you could play it right here. This guy would go in your hand, the Decoy would go on the board. Boom, you got another medic in your hand you can use for something. So that is what Decoy is for. There's also, you can't see any of them on the board right now. It's not exactly a special ability, but most units are in a specific range. So there's 3 ranges on the board. There's Siege, which is this back run, range, middle, close, which is the front one, right? And then it's mirrored on your opponent's side of the board. Close, range, siege. So most units go in exactly one range. That's what this little symbol means. But some units are agile, which means they can go in either close or the ranged range row. So that's one more ability. Finally, there are weather effects. So weather effects apply to one range on both sides of the board. So there's a biting frost, something something fog, and torrential rain. Biting frost applies to the close range. Fog applies to the middle range. Rain applies to the siege / far range. And what weather effects do is they reduce the strength of every non-hero unit in that row to 1. And finally, there are rally horns. So rally horns only work on one side of the board. Also, this unit has an ability that does the same thing as rally horn. Looks like this little horn symbol. Rally horns multiply the strength of every unit in that row, every non-hero unit in that row by 2. And the order these apply is in case there's multiple that are in effect at the same time. First weather effects, then morale, then tight bond, and rally horns, which you can do in either order because they're both multiplication. So like, pretend that there was frost here, right? These 3 tight bond units would all initially be set to 1 strength from the weather. But then this morale would kick in and they'd all be 2 strength. And then this rally horn would kick in and they'd all be 4. And then tight bond would kick in and they would all be 16. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. I realize it's kind of a lot. If you already played Gwent, you didn't need this at all. If you didn't, don't worry about it too much. Well, yeah, hopefully it'll make sense.